We continue now at the top of Daf Mem Gimel Amud Aleph and Meseches Sanhedrin. This is Sanhedrin Daf 43a. On the previous Amud, the Gemara asked, how do we know that the Beis Haskila is outside of all three machanos, meaning outside of the city or outside of Yerushalayim? And Rav Papa said that the source is from the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu, his machane, was machane Levia, and so we're taking out of machane Levia, we know that much. And then how do we know outside of machane Yisrael as well? It's because it says in the pasuk Vayotziu that they took out the Mekalel, and so from that pasuk we understand to take out of another machane, meaning outside of machane Yisrael. But the Gemara asked, isn't that pasuk of Vayotziu just saying that they did what they were instructed to do? And the Gemara now says that we already would know from another pasuk, because the pasuk says Uvnei Yisrael asu kasher tziva Hashem es Moshe. It says that Bnei Yisrael did what they were instructed, and so therefore that pasuk of Vayotziu, that again becomes extra and teaches us that we take the person outside of Machane Yisrael. And the Gemara continues, Ela me'ata, but according to that, Vayirgemo oso even my avdile. What do we do with the pasuk when it says Vayirgemo oso oven? The full pasuk over here is Vayadaver Moshe el Bnei Yisrael Vayotziu es hamekalel el michutz lamachane. That's the pasuk Vayotziu that we just mentioned. And then it says Vayirgemu oso oven, that they stoned him. Again, talking about the mekalel. Uvnei Yisrael asu kasher tziva Hashem es Moshe. Bnei Yisrael did what they were instructed, which is the pasuk that we just mentioned above. And Rashi explains Ela me'ata, but according to that, the Darash Vayotziu Dorish Nami Vayirgemu. So you should also make a drasha of Vayirgemu, that they carried out the stoning. Again, my avdile, what do we do with that pasuk? And the Gemara says to that, Hahumi boy leilachidetanya. That pasuk is used for what is taught in the following brisa. The pasuk says again, Vayirgemu oso ba'avin. It says that they stoned him, oso velo b'chsuso. So we understand that they stone him, but not in his garments. He's not wearing any clothing at the time of the stoning. And Evan, it says a stone, shemet meis be'evan achas yotza, that if he dies with just one stone, that is enough. And the Gemara says, v'yitzrich lemichtav Evan, v'yitzrich lemichtav avonim. It needs to say Evan, and it also needs to say avonim in plural. It needs to say stones. The cause of Rachmana Evan, because if it only said Evan, hava amina, then I would have thought that if he doesn't die by one stone, we would not bring others in order to kill him. That's what I would think. So kasav rachmana avonim, that's why the pasuk writes avonim, to say that you bring other stones. Because of rachmana avonim, and if it said stones, have amina meikara naisi tarte, I might think from the outset we bring already two stones. Kasav rachmana evan, that's why the pasuk writes evan. And Rashi explains below chsus, so again without his garments, arum, he's naked. V'alfa gav degabe tzavo ksiv v'ragmu. So even though by the instruction it already is written that they stone him, so we see from there that it's without his garment. I did dechasiv evan lidrasha kasav nami oso. Since it says the word evan for a drasha, as we just saw, we also have the word oso. But mekalel ksiv evan, and Rashi notes by mekalel is where it says evan uve mekoshesh, and by the one who gathered on Shabbos ksiv avonim, that's where it says the word avonim. But the Gemara continues, but the Tana before, we quoted a Bryce on the previous Amud, learned out from a Gzeira Shava this idea of taking out of the three machanos by the Mekalel. And so how can Rav Papa have a different source than the Bryce? And the Gemara says, Ilu lo namar kamar. What the Bryce was saying is, if it would not have said, V'hachi kamar means as follows, Ilu lo namar kra, meaning if we did not have a pasuk, which is the pasuk of Rav Papa, Hayisi omer Gzeira Shava, then I would have this Gzeira Shava. Achshav shenemar kra, now that we have the pasuk Gzeira Shava lo tzarech, the Gzeira Shava is not needed. And Rashi explains why Tana de Lael nemar kamer b'Gzeira Shava. Again, the Tana before learned it from this Gzeira Shava. De parim yalafla, we learned it out for the Gzeira Shava by parim. That was by the parim hanisrafim, again on the previous Amud. Vehechi aser Papa lefluge alei the Tana. So how does our Papa argue with the Tana of the Brisa? And the Gemara says v'hachi kamar Tana de Brisa. The Tana de Brisa of the Brisa saying as follows. Ilu lo nemar, if we didn't have a pasuk, kolomar, meaning hadi yalef lami Gzeira Shava lav dafka, we're not actually learning it out from Gzeira Shava. Elachi gamar means to say as follows: Inami lo avenofik mimash muusa dekref. It wouldn't be learned out from the implication of the pasuk. Akati lo havi yechilna lemeimar chutz lemachna achas. We still could not say that it just means one machna. Demaisina shalosh machanos migzeira Shava, because we'd have a Gzeira Shava to learn out shalosh machanos. The parim again from the parim. V'hashta afilu Gzeira Shava lo tzarich. But right now we don't even need the Gzeira Shava. And the Gemara continues with another answer. Ravashi Yomer, Ravashi says, Moshe Hecha Haviyosef, again, where was Moshe Rabbeinu? B'machane Levia. He was in the Machane Levia. V'yomer le Rachmana Hotzias HaMekalel Chutz LaMachane Levia. And then the pasuk says, bring the person who cursed outside. It means outside of the Machane Levia. El Michutz LaMachane. And when it says El Michutz LaMachane, Chutz LaMachane Yisrael, that means outside of the Machane Yisrael. And Vayotziu Es HaMekalel, when it says they took out the Mekalel, La'asiyah, that just means that they actually did what they were instructed. But the Gemara continues, Asiya behed yiksibahu, but again, it already said a pasuk that they did what they were instructed. It said, Uvnei Yisrael asu, kasher tziva Hashem es Moshe, that Bnei Yisrael did, just like Hashem commanded Moshe. And the Gemara answers to that, Ahumi boy lechad l'smicha, v'chad l'dechiyah. That's necessary. We have to teach both with regards to smicha and with regards to dechiyah. We will see Rashi in a moment. And the Gemara continues, Amrulei Rabbanan l'Ravashi, the Rabbanan said to Ravashi, L'didach, according to you, kol hani hotzi, dechsivi, v'param hanisrafim, my derashtabu. Again, what are you going to do with all of those times it says hotzi by the param hanisrafim that we mentioned above? And the Gemara says to that kasha, the Gemara leaves that as a difficulty. And Rashi explains, hotzi greda mashma hotziu mimekomcha. Again, just hotzi, that alone would mean take out from your place, out of the machane levia. V'chiyadr ksiv michutz lamachane, and when it then says michutz lamachane, lafuke mimachane Yisrael kamar, that means even take out from the machane Yisrael. And Rashi continues, hahu uvnei Yisrael, again that pasuk of uvnei Yisrael, mi boile l'smicha v'ledechiyah, that's need for smicha and dechiyah, dechsivi betzava v'lo mifrashi ba'asiyah. It says that by the instruction, but it's not explained when they actually did it. Hadar sayim kra, uvnei Yisrael asu af smicha dechiyah. That's what the pasuk means to say when it concludes, and says Bnei Yisrael actually did what they were instructed. They did the smicha and the dechiyah. And smicha, what does that refer to? V'samchu kol hashomim. That refers to the fact that those who were listening, they would lean their head, they would lean their hands. And dechiyah, lav hachaksiv, it doesn't say dechiyah over here. Elamisina yaro yira mekan she'echad min ha'edim bavidocheyu. The dechiyah means that one of the witnesses comes and pushes him. Umapilu migova beis haskila la'aretz. He throws him from the high point of the beis haskila to the earth. The beis haskila gavoa shtei komos, because the beis haskila was shtei komos high. It was the height of two individuals. And again, smicha, that's referring to the fact that the people who were present would lay their hands upon the person who was being stoned and say that they are not responsible for his death. He alone is responsible. And the Gemara continues with the two dots. The Mishnah said, Echad omed v'chulu. The Mishnah described the person who stands with the sudar. And the Gemara says, Amar Rav Huna says, Pshita li, it is obvious to me, Echad even sheniskal bo, whether we're talking about the stone that he is stoned with, v'echad eitz shenisla bo, or the wood that he's hung from, v'echad sayif shenerag bo, or whether we're talking about the sword that he is beheaded with, v'echad sudar shenechnek bo, or whether we're talking about the cloth that he's strangled with, kulan mishel tzibur. Obviously, all of those items are coming from public funds. My time, what's the reason? We're not going to say that he needs to spend his own money in order to purchase the items that are going to be used to execute him. But the Gemara continues, Boy Rav Huna asks the following question. Sudar shemenifin bo v'sus sheratzu ma'amidan, the cloth that is used that they wave to save him, or the horse that runs after and stops them again to save him, mishel mihu, from whose funds, who's paying for those, kevan da'atzola didei, since it's in order to save him, mididehu, maybe it should come from his money. Odilmar, maybe kevan deveidina mechayvin lemevad bo hatzola, since the bezin is chayiv, they're obligated to try to save him, mididhu, so it should come from them, it should come from the public funds. And the Gemara continues, Vesuin further, Hadamar Rav Chia bar Ravashi, Amar Rav Chisda, that which Rav Chia bar Ravashi said, that Rav Chisda said, Hayotze leharig, if somebody's going out to be executed, Mashkin also koret shalavana, we give him to drink a small amount, a grain of frankincense, because shal yayin, which is in a cup of wine, kedesha titoref daito, in order to confuse him, it makes his death easier. Shanemar, as it says in the pasuk, tenu shecher laoved v'yayin lamari nefesh, you give intoxication, you give wine to this person. V'tanyan, we learned in a brayso, nashim yikaru sheb Yerushalayim, that the prominent women of Yerushalayim, hayu misnadvos, they would donate. Umevios asan, they were the ones that donated this koret shalavana, because shal yayin. And so the question there is the same. Lohis nadvu nashim yukaros mishalmi. Let's say they would not have donated. Let's say the prominent women of Yerushalayim didn't make that donation. From whose funds? How is that paid for? And the Gemara says to that, Havadai mistabra, it certainly makes sense when it's coming to talking about those things, when we're talking about the koret shalavana, we're talking about the kos shal yayin, mishal tzibur, that probably does come from the communal funds. Kevin dechsiv tenu, since it says in the pasuk again, tenu shecher la'ovid, it says give, mididhu, that sounds like it comes from them. And the Gemara continues, Boy minei Ravacha bar Huna me Rav Sheshes. Ravacha bar Huna asked Rav Sheshes the following question: Amar echad min hatalmidim yesh li lalamid olav zuchus. What if one of the students, he says, I have a reason why this person should be innocent, v'nishtatik, but then he suddenly becomes mute and he's not able to explain his reason. So mahu, what would be the halacha in that situation? And the Gemara continues, Menafeach Rav Sheshes biyodei. Rav Sheshes, he waved with his hand. Nishtatik, if you're talking about a person becoming mute and you're going to take that seriously, afilu echad besof olam nami. Maybe we should say that somebody at the other end of the world has a reason. In other words, we should not take into account the fact that he says that he has something to say if he didn't actually provide the reason. But the Gemara says that's not a good question. Hasam lo kamar, over there by echad besofa olam, nobody said anything. But hacha kamar, but here he did say that he has a reason of zechus, and maybe we should take that seriously. So what do we do in that situation? And the Gemara says, Tashma, come in here the following proof. The Amar Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina, because Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina says, Echon min hatalmidim shezicha v'meis. Let's say one of the students, he gives a reason. In this case, he not only says he has a reason, but he actually gives a reason why the person should be innocent, but then he dies, that student dies. Rowan oso ki'ilu chai. V'yomid b'makom, we view it as if he's still alive and standing in his place. We consider that to be one of the votes for innocence. And the Gemara says, Zicha in lo zicha lo. It sounds like only because he explained his reason, otherwise we don't take it into account. And so therefore, we would say in this case as well, if he simply said he has a reason of zechus but never explained it, we should not take it into account. But the Gemara says, Zicha pshitali, it's not true. By Zicha, it is obvious to me. But Amar ti boilach, but in the case of Amar, we still have this question. The Gemara remains with a question, what do we do? Again, in this situation where the student says he has a reason for innocence, but he doesn't have time to provide the reason, and he becomes a mute. And Rashi explains, V'nishtatik, again, Nelam, he becomes a mute. Mahu, what do we say? Mi Amar, ilo ishtatik have a mamish b'dvarav. On the one end, we could say that if he would not have been silenced, if he wouldn't have become a mute, what he was saying had substance. V'tzarech listar sadin, and in that case, maybe we need to overturn the ruling. We'll havi dayan and acherim, bring new judges. Menafeich Rav Sheshas biyadei, Rav Sheshas blew with his hand. Kolomar ruach, who's that? What he's saying is what you're saying is just like wind, Shamar. That what you're saying, it's nothing. Kevan shenishtatik, if he became silenced, mahoel, what does that help us? Ilahachi asas lamechash, if we're concerned for that, afilu echad besof olam nami ema b'chol hayotz and leharig. Even somebody at the other end of the world, we should say, anytime someone's being executed, shemi yesh echad besof olam shiadalo zechus. Maybe there's someone at the other end of the world who knows some kind of merit. Uparchinam, but the Gemara then asked me, dami hasam lo amar hachamar. Can you really compare? Over there, no one said anything. Here, he said something. And then the Gemara brought the proof from the case of shazicha. Again, a situation where shahotzi devarav v'taimo laor, a case where Rabbi Yossi said the person already explained the reason for innocence. And again, in that case, Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina said that we do count him as part of the vote. And the Gemara said, Tiboilach, the Gemara said, well, that's true. Meaning to say, in such a situation where he actually explained his reason, Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina would count it, but it's still a question, it's still tiboilach in a case where he didn't give a reason. Miyamar zicha dafka, what's he saying? Only zicha, only where he actually explained his reason that we count him. O dilma Rabbi Yossi orcha demilsa kamar, maybe Rabbi Yossi would have meant in all cases we count him, and he was just giving a common case. Shein derech l'talmud lomar yeshli l'lamed zechus mishtatik. It's not normal that a student would say, I have a reason for innocence, and then suddenly become mute before he's able to give that reason. V'chein misa, the same by death, he'll suddenly die. Demistama miyad omer rayosef, because in most cases the person's going to say, I have a reason, and immediately he'll provide the reason. But nevertheless, it could be that if it did happen in that fashion, maybe Rabbi Yossi would say the same thing, and that's why the Gemara kept it as a question. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Afiluhu v'chulu, even the person who's being executed, if he says he has a reason for innocence, we bring him back as long as there's substance to his words. And the Gemara says, V'afilu pam rishonu shni, is that true even the first and second time that he says he has a reason why he thinks he's innocent? Do we need to have substance to his words even the first or second time? V'atanya, but we learned in a brayso, pam rishonu shnia, that the first or second time, bein she'esh mamish b'dvara, bein she'ein mamish b'dvara machzirno. So it doesn't matter if there's substance to what he's saying or if there's no substance to what he's saying, we always bring him back to the court. Mikan va'elach, but after the second time already, im yesh mamish b'dvara machzirno, so if there's substance to what he's saying, we return him. Ein mamish b'dvara ve'ein machzirno, so but if there's no substance to what he's saying, we do not return him. And so you see that we don't always need to have substance to what he's saying. And the Gemara says, Amar Rapapa says, Tirgama, you should interpret the Mishnah as well. Mipam shniya ve'elach. It just means from the second time and onward, it's true. The first time that he says he has a reason for innocence, there doesn't have to be any mamish, there doesn't have to be any substance to what he's saying. But then again, in subsequent situations, there has to be mamish b'dvarav. And the Gemara continues, so how do we know whether there's substance or not? Amar Abaye says, the Masrina le zuga de Rabbanan, we send together with him a pair of Rabbanan, of Torah scholars. If they notice that there's some substance in his words, then yes, they will return him. And if not, then they do not. And the Gemara says, well, why not give him this pair of Rabbanan from the very beginning? Why are we only waiting till after that first and second time? And the Gemara says, Agav de bois, because in the beginning, when he's very afraid, lo motzi amar kol mai de isla, he's not able to really formulate everything that that he wants. He's too nervous, and therefore we allow him to come back without having any Rabbanan evaluating what he says. But again, after that first and second time, so then already we say there has to be substance, and we send a pair of Rabbanan, a pair of Torah scholars, to evaluate what he is saying. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Matzu lo zechus, if they find a merit for the person, patru, so then they exempt him, they don't kill this individual. Vimlav, but if not, yotze lisakal, he's taken out to be stoned. Uchruz yotze lefanav, and a crier goes out before him and proclaims as follows, Ish ploni ben ploni, so-and-so, the son of so-and-so, yotze lisakal, he's going out to be stoned, al sha'avar, avera plonis, because he did the following avera, uploni edav, and so-and-so are the witnesses, kal misha yodea lo zechus yavo of anybody who knows a merit for this person should come and say that merit. And the Gemara says, Amar Abaye says, V'tzarach l'meimar, when the person is proclaiming this, he has to say, Biyom ploni, that it was on this particular day that he did the Aveira, Uvashah plonis at this hour, Uvamakam ploni in this place, Dil ma'ika diyadi, V'asu umazim l'hu. Maybe there's somebody who knows and can be mazim, can falsify the witnesses and say, you weren't in that particular place at that time, you were with us. And the Gemara continues at the two dots, Uchruz yotze lefanav, the person, the crier goes out before him again and proclaims that so-and-so is being stoned for such and such aveira. And the Gemara says, lefanav in mei karalo, he goes in front of him, but he doesn't go earlier, they don't make this proclamation earlier. V'atanya, but then we learn in a brisa, Be'erev ha-pesach talu liyeshu, on Erev Pesach they hung Yeshu, this is referring to Jesus. V'hakruz yotze lefanav mem yom kodem shu yotze lisokel, and the crier went out 40 days before he was going to be stoned, al shakishef v'hesis v'yidiach es Yisrael, because of the sorcery that he did and the fact that he incited Klal Yisrael to do averis. Kol mishi yodea lo zechus, anyone who knows a merit for him, yavo v'yilmad olav, should come and should say the merit. V'lo matzu lo zechus, they weren't able to find a merit. V'taluhu be'erev Pesach, and they hung him on Erev Pesach. And so you see already 40 days before they're making this proclamation. And the Gemara continues, Amar Ula says, V'tizber, is this really logical to bring a proof from Yeshu? Bar hafuche zechusu, is this somebody that we're really looking for merit for at all? Mesesu, he was a mesis, he was an inciter. V'rachman Amar, we already said this earlier, the Torah says, Lo sachmol, v'lo sachasa olav, when it comes to a mesis, there's no mercy, we don't try to cover for him, so why would we be doing this anyhow when it comes to Yeshu? Elashani Yeshu, rather it's different by Yeshu, dekarav l'malchus have, because he was close to the government, and that's why this was necessary. And the Gemara continues at the two dots, Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Chamisha Talmidim hayu lo liyeshu. Yeshu had 5 students, Matoi, Nakoi, Netzer, Ubuni, Vitoda, those were the 5 students. And the Gemara says, Asiu lamatai, they brought Matai. Amar Louis said to them, that you can't kill me, Matai Yehorig, you're going to kill Matai Haksib, but isn't there a pasuk which says, Mosai Ovo ve'eroe pnei Elokim, that I'm going to come and see HaKadosh Baruch Hu? It sounds like Mosai, using that word Mosai, like Matai. It sounds like that's something that's positive, that's something that's righteous. Amrulo, they said to him, in Matai Yehorig, yes, Matai should be killed. Tichsiv, because it's also written in the pasuk, Mosai Yamus v'avet Shemo, it talks about the death of Mosai. Asiu l'Nakai, they brought Nakai. Amrulo, he said to them, Nakai Yehorig, should Nakai be killed? Haksiv is and written v'naki v'tzadik al tarog, you don't kill a naki and a tzadik. Amrulo, they said to him, in yes, nakai yehorig, nakai should be killed. Techsiv, because it's written b'mistarim yehorig naki, and so again it mentions this idea of killing naki. Asiu l'neitzer, so then they brought neitzer, and Amar Lahu, so he said to them, Neitzer Yehorig, should Neitzer be killed? Vaksiv, isn't it written in the pasuk, V'neitzer misharosh of Yifre, that a branch will grow out of his roots? Amrulei, they said to him, in yes, Neitzer Yehorig, Neitzer should be killed. Dichsiv, because it's also written, V'atosh lachna mikivrecha, talks about being sent from the grave, Keneitzer nisav, like a branch that is abhorred. And the Gemara continues, Asiu lebuni, so then they brought Buni. Amar Louis said to them, Buni Yehorig, should Buni be killed? Haksiv is written, B'ni Bechori Yisrael, that B'ni is my firstborn of Klal Yisrael. Amrulei, they said to him, in yes, Buni Yehorig, Buni should be killed. Tichsiv, because it's also written, Hinei Anochi Horeg, es bincha bechorecha, I'm going to kill your firstborn son. Asiu letoda, and then they brought Toda. Amar Louis, he said to them, Toda Yehorig, should Toda be killed? Haksiv, isn't it written, Mizmor Lesoda, that there's a Mizmor Lesoda? Amrulei, they said to him, in yes, Toda Yehorig, Toda should be killed. Dechsiv, because it's also written, Zoveach Toda, Yechabdonani, whoever slaughters Toda honors me. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Mem Gimel Amud Beis.